Good day, everyone. Welcome to the second day of our in-service training for teachers on distance learning delivery modalities. Today, I am tasked to deliver a talk on assessment overview. Assessment in general is the process of gathering information, necessary information for that matter, from the different sources in order to have a deeper understanding on different situations, conditions in our lives. In a day-to-day basis, we do assess, right? Okay, so for example, you want to travel um, with the pandemic around, we have to consider a lot of things. So for example, you have to look into the condition of the place you're going to visit. Second, you're going to think of the health protocols you're going to pass through before you can travel. And the third is, of course, the expenses incurred in such travel. Is it worth it? So you really have to assess if it is feasible really to travel. So that is assessment in general. Now, if we're going to apply assessment in education, we always equate it with classroom assessment. Okay, so we'll see. Classroom assessment, according to the DepEd Order number 8, series of 2015, policy guidelines on classroom assessment for the K-12 basic education program. It says here, it is an integral part of curriculum implementation. It allows the teachers to track and measure learners' progress and to adjust instruction accordingly. It informs the learners as well as their parents and guardians of their progress. So, if we're going to consider the face-to-face type of teaching, the old normal that we have, we really go through the different assessments. When we start doing our review, motivation, unlocking and everything, all those activities, when we do our lesson up to the last part, which is the evaluation before you give the homework if it is needed, then we are already having the assessment. Now, let's take a look at assessment, classroom assessment on DepEd Order number 31, series of 2020, which is the interim policy guidelines for assessment and grading in light of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. It says here that classroom assessment is an ongoing process of identifying, gathering, organizing, and interpreting quantitative and qualitative information about what learners know and can do. So this kind of assessment is done when learners already try to answer different activities in the modules that we have. So from the part of what I know, which is the pre-assessment activity, down to the last part, which is the additional activities, there is already assessment going on. No? You are already identifying, gathering information, what are the things that they know already and what are the things that they still need to know, and how are they progressing from each activity, from one activity to another. Okay. Then, based from what was discussed yesterday by our ASDS, Dr. Cerveza, we have the DepEd Order number 12, series of 2020, which is the adoption of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. This is for school year 2020-2021. And part of this is the adopting the most essential learning competencies. Now, from the thousands of learning competencies in the K-12 basic education curriculum, the Bureau of Curriculum Development, Curriculum Standards Development Division, developed the MELCs to address the challenges brought about by the global pandemic. So you might think that they reduced the number of competencies. No, they lumped the competencies. That's why each competency now is so broad that when you look into the modules that we have right now, each competency is already given different objectives or subtasks into objectives, and those objectives are translated into learning activities inside the module. Okay, let's continue. Now, the DepEd Order 31, because of that DepEd Order 12, it has to go with another type of assessment, which is the DepEd Order 31 series of 2020, which is the interim policy guidelines for assessment and grading in light of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. Now, there are principles that we're going to consider. The first one is assessment should be holistic and authentic in capturing the attainment of the most essential learning competencies. So, complete measurement is there because the complete module is presented. There is an activity wherein learners will answer, as I've mentioned a while ago, the pre-assessment activity down to the last activity. So the activities there are congruent to the MELCs, or the most essential learning competencies. Second, we also have assessment is integral for understanding student learning and development. So it is very essential to analyze the learner's progress. Are they progressing? Are they improving from one activity to another? Can they tackle the different activities inside the module? Are they not, don't they find difficulty in the different activities there? So you really would see, you would really assess if they are passing through such difficulty. Okay? And we also have another one. A variety of assessment strategies is necessary with formative assessment, taking priority to inform, teaching, and promote growth and mastery. So how is this done? What are those assessment strategies presented? Okay, you have the quizzes, no? And then you have also the self-reflection tool, because learners would also fill out the self-reflection tool. What are the things inside the module that were so easy for them to answer, and what are the things that were so difficult for them? And we also consider the different outputs that they're going to produce for the mastery of the learning competencies. Now, let's continue. Another principle is that assessment and feedback should be a shared responsibility among teachers, learners, and families. Why shared responsibility? First, responsibility because teachers should really be very conscientious in choosing the appropriate strategy in providing assessment. And also the learner should be able to answer all those activities presented by the teacher. And what about the parents, the guardians? What are their roles? Their role is really to support the learners in their studies. Not really answering for them, but to support, meaning they can give examples, no, in line with what the learner is learning. Okay? And the last principle is assessment and grading should have a positive impact on learning. So when we say positive impact on learning, they should be able to apply what they have learned in real life situations. Then you can say that they have really mastered the competency way even after they have learned the lessons. Okay? And consider also in this DepEd Order 31 the scope of this memo or DepEd order. The scope is, it is for the public elementary and secondary schools nationwide for school year 2020-2021. Now, what about the private schools? Now, the private schools, they're allowed to modify the policy as long as it is within the philosophy, their own philosophy and vision and mission approved by the Department of Education regional offices. Okay? So let's continue. Now, we are already familiar that there are two types of assessment. The first one is the formative assessment. Now, let us define what is a formative assessment. It is a process that involves teachers using evidence about what learners know and can do to inform and improve their teaching. So all throughout the time that the learners are learning, no? Learning modular, it could be modular, online or blended, then that is already formative assessment. Now, how are the activities, how are the results of the formative assessment considered? It can be recorded, yes, for the knowledge of the teacher and the learners in giving feedbacks. But it will not form part of the grade of the learner. Okay, what about the summative assessment? Summative assessment is usually administered towards the end of a learning period to measure the learner's mastery on the essential learning competencies. Results are recorded and it will form part of the grade of the child or of the student. So in having summative assessment, we consider that there are a lot of modules in a quarter. So after having 2 modules, then we can have already a summative test for that matter. Okay, let's continue. Now, I'll be showing you the different procedures in planning assessment. In planning the assessment. Actually, for the information of everybody, these procedures were the things followed by our writers when they prepared the modules. No? So I will just run through all of the steps and we'll see so that you will have a bright or a bigger picture, a clearer picture of what our writers did in coming up with the modules. The first one is teachers need to be creative and flexible in assessing student learning while still adhering to the principles of quality assessment and quality assessment practice. So they should be considering the learner's capability and adjust to the levels, of course, not compromising the MELs. So meaning to say, if the competencies for a grade 4 student, then the type of material used, the language used there should be within the level of knowledge of the learners. No? There should be no highfalutin words so that comprehension would be very easy on the part of the learners. Okay, next. Distance learning delivery modalities should be taken into consideration in designing assessments. When we had our assessment, when we had the old normal type of education, we give different types of assessment because it is in the classroom setting. But considering the different modalities, you have the modular, online, and blended, and all of those are considering the remote education, then we really have to consider the type of assessment we're going to give to the learners. The type of assessment that it should be, when they come up with outputs, it should be not so difficult to produce. It should be within the bounds or the 4 corners of their houses maybe, so that the production of the outputs would be easier for the learners, and so with the guardians and the parents. Okay. So formative assessment, another thing is formative assessment is about getting better. So it should be specific, frequent, repetitive, and free from the restrictions of grading. It should target skills that are necessary to the attainment of learning competencies as measured in summative assessments. So when we say frequent and repetitive, you can observe that our modules now are like this, no? You have a lot of activities from the time that you have the what's in part, then you have the learning of the lesson, then you have the discussion, then what's more, there are a lot of activities there. You can have 2 to 3 activities, and you have another activity for what I can do before they can go to the assessment. Why is it repetitive? For the learners to master the competencies. Okay? Another one. What about the summative assessment? Summative assessment shall continue in the form of written works and performance tasks. So, in Deped Order 8, series of 2015, our grading system considers 3, no? It is comprised of 3 items like the written works, you have performance tasks, and periodic examinations. In this interim policy guidelines of Deped Order 31 series of 2020, we don't have the periodic exam. We only focus on the written works and performance tasks. Now for the written works, you have the quizzes. It is basically the content of what we have learned. For the performance task, it must be assigned to provide opportunities for learners to apply what they are learning to real life situations. And teachers should set realistic expectations and use their professional judgment to find a good balance between what is effective and what is feasible to accomplish remotely. That is why our module, it has a lot of activities on as written works, considered as written works, and also performance tasks. Actually, our teachers can already select from among the different activities in the module as performance tasks which can be recorded. No? Okay, so let's continue. Now, in this part of the procedure, so that is the planning stage. What about the conducting assessment remotely? Now it comes with another activity that teachers now will now apply what they have taken from the modules. Okay, first, what do we do? How do we conduct assessment remotely? First, we communicate the assessment task. And what are those things that should be communicated to our stakeholders, our learners, and our parents and guardians? First, the objective of the assessment task. So when we give an assessment task, we always consider the most essential learning competencies, that those assessment activities that the teacher should be providing should be aligned with the MELCs. Okay, what is the role of the learner and the parents in doing the assessment? So this will be discussed in detail later by our education program supervisor assigned in Kinder, none other than Ma'am Lea De Leon. Okay, and it should be also explained the procedure. And of course, the rubrics, especially if you're going to give performance tasks, there should be rubrics that should be followed. Now, how are rubrics done? Now, in your modules, there are already rubrics. The rubrics there, statements there are aligned with the MELCs. There are also a clear expectation, and the levels of performance are indicated in the rubric. Okay, and aside from communicating the task, we should also record also the progress of the assessment. Okay, so what are the things that we consider in recording? We record the self-monitoring tool that is already found in the Annex E of Decade Order 31 series of 2020. We have the self-reflection tools by our learners, and of course the learner's portfolio, wherein we can now assess their learning through the different outputs that are placed in the portfolio. Now, it is necessary that feedback and remediation should be provided to our learners. Now, you might ask, when is feedback given? Do we give feedback only during or after the summative performance or tasks? Actually, according to DepEd Order 31, providing feedback should be done during the formative assessment and the summative assessment. Formative, why? So that learners would be able to catch up on the things that they have not mastered on. And for the summative assessment, if they continue to get low grades in the summative assessment performance task, or it could be performance task or written works, then there should be a remediation that should be conducted every 5th week of any quarter to prevent the learners from failing in any learning area. Okay, and of course, part of the assessment is also the grading system. The grading system is also different from what we have in the DepEd Order number 8 series of 2015. For this interim policy guidelines, we have only two, again, as mentioned earlier, the written works and performance tasks. We also use the student's portfolio for this. And for the written works, there should be minimum of 4 written works and 4 performance tasks within the quarter. Now, this is minimum. You can have more than this, but of course, not less than 4. for the performance tasks, there are already a lot of activities, performance tasks, activities in the module that you can consider and which you can use in recording as grade that will form part of the grade of the child. But if you think that the activities there are quite difficult because it is not within the level of your learners, then teachers are are allowed to come up with their own written works and with their own performance task. You can have collaboration with other teachers, no? For example, science, mathematics, and English teachers can collaborate to come up with one output. But one output, but there will be 3 grades, 1 grade for English, math, and science. So example is maybe an experiment, no? An experiment, the process, how the different processes used in the experiment that would be found in the rubric in science. Then the computation, if there are computations needed, so that would be the rubric for the mathematics subject. And how was the experiment presented? How was it written? How was the grammar correct? Correct usage, consider of mechanics in writing, we consider that all of those things, punctuation marks and everything, capitalization, so that will be the rubric for English. So see, we can help our learners come up with one output with having 3 grades. Now this will be discussed thoroughly later on by Sir Gal Alburo in the integrative performance tasks. Okay, and again, you might be familiar already with the distribution of the grades or percentages for the summative assessment components per learning area. This is for grades 1 to 10. So we also have here written works and performance tasks. So for language, AP, and ESP, you have 40% and 60% respectively for the written works and performance tasks. And then science, both, they have 50%, and MAPE, EPP, and TLE, 30% and 70%. Now observe how the percentages are distributed. Okay, so you can see here that the bigger percentage is given to the performance task. Why? Because we would want to know if the learners have mastered the content or the skills that they have learned from the different subjects, then they would be able to perform the task asked from them or given to them. So in so doing, the bigger percentage is given to the performance tasks. Okay, now that's for grades 1 to 10. Now let's go to the table 2, which is for the senior high school. Again, look at the distribution of percentages. You have the written works and performance tasks again. All from all other subjects, 40 and 60%. Then for the work immersion, research, business enterprise, simulation, exhibit, performance, both 50%. And for the tech block, sports, arts, and design tracks, you have 30% and 70%. Again, performance tasks has the bigger percentage. Okay, so this is the overview of what assessment is all about in this new normal of education that we have. Now, for examples of computation, please refer to page 7 of the Depth Order 31. And by the way, the transmutation is we will still be using the transmutation table for in grading system and this grading system from Depth Order 8 series of 2015. Okay, so to end my talk, I'll leave you with this quotation. Learners need endless feedback more than they need endless teaching, by Grant Wiggins. Good afternoon, good morning, good day everyone. I hope I was able to deliver the things that are necessary for us to know as regards assessment. Thank you very much and God bless us all.